Good evening. Thank you so much to everyone for being here tonight. My name's Karen. I've had diabetes for 23 years. I was 5 years old when I was diagnosed, so I don't really remember life without it. The same is true for my older sister, Lauren, who was diagnosed even younger, at just 3 years old. In fact, it's probably difficult for anyone in our family to remember life before type 1 took over the household. Diabetes is a lot of things to a lot of people. To most of those outside our world, to those blissfully unaware of the difference between type 1 and type 2, it's the reason their elderly relative has to take it easy on the sweets, or an opportunity to make a joke when they see an overweight guy eating a candy bar. To our friends and coworkers, it's the reason we excuse ourselves to test our blood sugar at the restaurant, or why we're sometimes seen drinking juice like it's the last liquid we'll ever be able to consume. To most parents of a newly diagnosed child, it's a terrifying unknown. They're sent home from the hospital with a bag of prescriptions and a binder full of instructions, wondering how sticking a syringe into a piece of fruit can possibly prepare them to pierce their child's innocent flesh countless times a day. To a child with diabetes, it's an unfair interruption from playtime with friends, a restraint they can't understand that keeps them from carelessly heading out to ride bikes with friends without first having to find a pocket into which glucose tabs can be stuffed. To a teen with diabetes, it's an embarrassing burden that makes them different from their peers at a time in their lives when they're struggling to do just the opposite. It's a dangerous opportunity to rebel against their parents and against their own bodies at a time in their lives when changes to the body are enough of an issue already. To a newly diagnosed adult who's just been told it's not the flu they've been ill with, but a chronic disease which will require constant, diligent care, it's a complete culture shock. They've just received the news that they'll now depend on multiple injections of hormone that their body had been producing on its own up until this point, one they've probably never given a second thought to. In an instant, they've lost freedoms they didn't realize they ever had. For parents of a diabetic child of any age, it's a monster that's painful to watch, one they feel helpless to control, and one they'll never stop fearing, no matter the age of that child. Ask any one of them here tonight, they'll tell you they'd trade places with their child in an instant if they could. For those of us who have lived with the disease for decades, it's just life, a part of who we are. The first thing we address when we wake up, and the last thing before we retire for the day. It's such second nature, we can discreetly inject insulin under the dinner table and can literally test our blood sugar in our sleep. We're inspired when we see Jocelyn's 50-year medalists receiving their honors for having lived with the daily challenge for so long. For the recipients of those 50-year medals, it's bittersweet. They're amazed watching the advancements in treatment, innovation they couldn't even fathom in the days of glucose tests with urine and boiling syringes over the stove for reuse. They also realize that even with these advancements, it's going to continue to take hard work each moment of each day to keep complications at bay or in check. To me, diabetes is an obstacle. Most of the time, we make it look easy. We love to share our success stories to show the general public that we're unstoppable. And don't get me wrong, type 1 hasn't really stopped me from doing much. But in this room, I call it an obstacle, an obstruction to me living my life without fear. It's an interruption. Most people training to run a race can jump on the treadmill without having to consider exactly what they've eaten over the past 6 hours or worry that a plummeting glucose level will force them to stop mid-workout. It's a frustrating game of tenths of units of insulin. 2 units of Humalog will bring my blood sugar to 110 this morning, but drop it to 44 tomorrow morning after having eaten the same exact breakfast. It's a mess. It litters my kitchen table with lancets and infusion sets, carpets the floor of my car with used test strips. It's expensive. Co-pays seem to be forever on the rise. It's upsetting. I can spend weeks on a work presentation only to wake up with a high blood sugar that morning that leaves me so sluggish I can hardly even make it to the meeting. And it's scary. We all know there's those lows that just rock your entire body, leave you feeling like you've just run a marathon. There are times when you don't feel low, but decide to check anyway before getting behind the wheel, only to see a 32 pop up on your glucose monitor screen. I'd be remiss, however, if I didn't also call diabetes an opportunity. Because of my diabetes, I've met throngs of people I otherwise wouldn't have. Amazing people at that. I've been inspired by these people to advocate for a cause I'm extremely passionate about. So I do have diabetes to thank for something. Needless to say, diabetes has affected my life in many ways. And I thought it had altered my little world as much as it possibly could, until 2 years ago on a Thursday afternoon when I got a phone call from my mother. My sister Lauren was away on a business trip, and my mother was helping my brother-in-law care for her 11-month-old daughter, my darling niece Ella. Wet diaper after wet diaper, and a very lethargic little Ella had my mom thinking the unthinkable. After 2 days of worrying and watching, she and my brother-in-law took Ella to the pediatrician and then immediately into Children's Hospital. Ella was diagnosed on May 25th, 2011, 1 week before her first birthday. With that phone call, my heart broke in a way that I didn't know was possible. My beloved baby niece, the one just learning how to say mom and dad and dance when her favorite song came on her bounce and play, would never know life without diabetes. My sister, who had worked so hard throughout her pregnancy and was doing phenomenally managing her own diabetes as a new mom, now had to be strong not only for herself and her health, but for that of her baby. I couldn't believe how unfair life was. Luckily, Ella is doing great. She's dealing with the obstacle with flying colors. My sister and her husband have found a way to continue excelling in their careers while keeping their toddler's A1C in excellent range, somehow between her soccer games and story time dates. They enjoy as fulfilling a life as any family could ask for. Ella turns 3 next week, and she will have a blast at her birthday party. I can see her now twirling around in her party dress, one that Lauren picked for its nice full skirt, billowy enough to conceal the belt and the pump case that hangs off of it. In a few years, Ella can go to Clara Barton Camp like Lauren and I did. In a few more, she'll learn to manage her diabetes around high school sports, student council meetings, and trips to the mall with friends. But I want more for her than this. I don't want to speak again about how well she's doing with her diabetes. I want to speak about type 1 diabetes in the past tense. My dream is for Ella to not have to take her diabetes to college or into her career with her, for her not to experience diabetes through the phases of life I just described. My dream is to hear her tell someone someday, before we were cured, my aunt and I used to have the same pump. We used to do the walk every year. She used to be a JDrF advocate. Let's make diabetes a thing of the past. Let's make it something we can look back on and say, remember when. The more trials and research we can fund, the faster relief can come for all of us. Relief from the 24/7 grind, the 3 a.m. blood sugar checks, the constant threat of a low that can throw our entire day off. Please help JDrF make type 1 a disease that my Ella and all of your Ellas can speak about in the past tense.